Okay, so now we want to start graphing. And so they give us just this graph, or in this form, where you have an amplitude and then you have a period, a change in the period. Okay, so the book has like 7 steps. I'm not going to quite do it the way the book does it. I'm going to go a way that I think is a little bit easier, but you're welcome to do it the way the book does. They just have a lot of formulas in there to look at and stuff. Okay, but either way, first thing, you've got to find the amplitude. And you've got to find the period. Okay, so the amplitude is the absolute value of A. So in our case, our amplitude is going to be 2. Okay. That's going to tell us then the vertical stretch. So we need to know that so we know how big to make our graph. Then we have to find the period. Okay, so period is equal to 2 pi over b. And our b is pi over 2. And so if I invert and multiply, I think I'm going to get 4 out of that. Okay, so think about 2 pi times 2 over pi, and that's going to get you 4. Okay, this is going to help us set up our graph paper. Okay, so see, we're not going to do it in terms of pi this time. We're going to do it in terms of integers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. We need a period. It doesn't say how big they want me to graph, like if they want me to graph it over 2 periods or if they want me to graph it over 1 period. I'll just do 1 period. Okay, so I know I'm going to go out here to 4. Okay, now this is what your book doesn't talk about that I'm going to talk about. So I would say, you know, draw the grid. You want to make sure that you're aware of the amplitude and the period, okay? So my period is, I'm sorry, my amplitude is 2, so I'm going to go up 1, 2, and down 1, 2. I'm okay with that because there's no vertical shift. There's no D in this case, okay? All right. Then I'm going to say mark the critical points. I think that's what our trig book calls them. Okay, so we're talking about going halfway between 0 and 4. Just eyeball it. That'd be at 2. Halfway between 0 and 2, which would be 1. And halfway between 2 and 4, which would be 3. Now, as long as you've labeled them, then there's no problem, okay? So if it's not to scale, that's okay. It's not too bad here. Maybe it's off a little bit, but you know, you've got to know the units of what you're measuring in. This time, my period is not in terms of pi, so I'm not labeling it in terms of pi. I can put a 1 and a 2 here, and a -1 and a -2. Okay, all right. Then we're going to think about what would the basic curve look like? What would a sine curve look like? Okay, so do a regular sine curve. So I'm going to do that with a dotted line. I'm going to mark these off. Maybe I'll do it in orange. And what's different is you can see that it's not in terms of pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. It's in terms of 1, 2, 3, and 4 because our period is 4 this time. Okay? Let's see. Now we have to start adjusting. So adjust for amplitude. Now my amplitude is 2, so that means any place there had been a 1, now it's going to be up at 2. And any place it was -1, it was going to be down at -2. Now this is not the curve, so I'll just dot it in. Okay, but that's what it looks like. But we have to do one more thing. We have to reflect, in this case, reflect if necessary. If it had been a +2, we'd be done. But it was negative. So that means I've got to take the point that was up here at 1, 2 is now going to be at 1, -2. The points that were on the x-axis, they'll still be in place. But the point that was at 3, -2 is now going to be at 3, +2. This isn't a point. Okay. So it's going down here and up and down like that. And that's one period. I can show that it continues in the pattern. I can draw arrows. They might tell me graph it over 2 periods, or they might say graph between 0 and 4 or something like that. These are functions, so they can restrict the domain. Okay, if you label it correctly, then you're going to be okay. Now try to draw a nice curve. That's the other thing I was going to say. I've seen some crazy curves. Well, I don't even want to draw them. But try to draw a nice curve. It takes some practice, you know, just do your best.